So I appreciate you guys joining us today. This is actually my first Nonprofit Leadership Lounge webinar. I've been having other individuals from the company do the actual presentation. So we've had Mary Del Hayes and I believe one or two others that have presented. So it's my first time doing it. Grace is requested. Like, it's very weird to go live. But I really just wanted to talk and speak about something that's been close to my heart. So as many of you know, I do interim leadership management. I come into organizations when they're going through leadership transitions, and I help them with creating safe space, but also part of that is reshaping the organization and restructuring, and that really lends itself to a lot of problems. 90% of the time when I come into an organization going through a leadership transition, it's unexpected and people have not been held accountable for a long time. There's actually this massive gap of accountability. It's primarily what has led to severe overturning of staff. And this is just one component of the things that I start implementing. And it's our nature to buck against the man. So if the man is saying we really want to have, the woman is saying we really want to have some amount of accountability here and you're going to be required to do certain things, oftentimes people will really push back. And I end up having transition, our own turnover happens during this. And that's part of it, is that you're implementing new systems and not everyone's going to be on board with implementation. If you're having problems at your organization knowing what your staff are doing on any given day, or you feel like you're not sure if they're performing at a high level, or if they're out getting ice cream in the middle of the day versus being at their desks and actually working, if you don't know what their production is, and you aren't working towards your strategic plan in a way that's really thoughtful, that you're really on top of, then you need the 5 C's of accountability. Not an expert in implementing them. I've just done it a lot of times. So hopefully today I'll give you a very brief overview of what we want to do for when we're looking at accountability. So why, when we look at accountability, is it a big deal? I'm going to switch to my slide. Oh, it's me. I should have had that first. Okay, so why accountability is kind of a big deal. One, no more guesswork. No more defining, finger pointing, saying that this person's not doing their job, they're not showing up. No more feeling alone in the work, and then no more chaos because people really know their roles, right? So accountability isn't about calling people out. It's about calling people up. It's about setting a standard and actually sticking to it. It's the difference between a thriving team and a strategic plan and a hot mess express, right? So the first C is clarity. Really setting crystal clear expectations. Clarity is queen, and that's true in all things, right? If we're in a marriage, we have to know what our expectations are in our relationship, what you're going to do, what I'm going to do, what we're going to bring to that relationship. The same is true for the workplace. Heck, we spend more time with the folks in the workplace. But if your expectations are fuzzier than a MySpace selfie from 2007, then no one knows what you're aiming for. You don't know what the goal is. And people can't deliver what they don't know. So you have to tell them exactly what you need, when you need it, and who's owning what. Then there's no assumptions, no confusion, and no drama. The second C is commitment. So clarity and then commitment. Commitment is showing up and following through. It's really walk the talk yourself. Don't ghost the goals yourself, and be the example to your team. This one's hard, right? Because there are times that we as leaders will create our own goals for ourselves, and then we end up walking away from them because they're not priority. But your team cannot see it that way. You can't expect people to care about the mission if you're over here treating deadlines like suggestions. Commitment means doing what you say you do. Even when Netflix just dropped a new season of Bridgerton, I wish. All right, so the third C, so we've got clarity, we've got commitment, and that's personal commitment to this process. The third C is communication. You're going to say it, you're going to repeat it, and you're going to write it down. There are no assumptions about what your expectations are. You're going to do check-ins, not at the point of chaos, but before then. And you're going to make sure that if you are providing feedback, which you should be, that it doesn't suck, that it's good feedback that's going to be helpful in getting your staff member over the goal line. So let's be real. If you're only talking about a deadline after it's missed, that's not accountability. That's damage control. You're going to need to communicate really early on, communicate often. When I onboard a new staff member with an organization, I give them a 30, 60, 90-day plan. I also give them 3, 6, 9-month performance expectations. You're going to make sure everyone's speaking the same language from the very beginning and not just corporate jargon soup with an employee handbook about being on time, dressing professionally, etc. So real in-depth communication, clarity, commitment, and communication. Okay. Number 4, consistency. So because flaky's only chewed on a croissant, right? We want to make sure that we are fair and firm. Bigger than that, even in my opinion, is that we're going to apply the same rules to everyone. So if you have staff member A who you are making exceptions for because she's going through a hard time, or because you have told her that she can focus on something else that she's interested in. But then you're saying to employee B, you're not meeting your goals, and I'm going to put you on a performance plan. And maybe that's the extreme example, but you can see there that I'm not treating everyone the same. And if the same rules aren't for everyone, then it's just like in a household. If your son doesn't have the same rules as your daughter, there's going to be tension between the employees, between the humans, and it's going to make it so that people don't know what the expectations are for them. So you've really got to keep your word. If you expect performance by a certain date, what are going to be the repercussions or the kind of fallout from that not happening? And it has to be the same for everyone. If the people are not meeting their goals, you're going to know that way in advance, right? Because of commitment and really following through. But that doesn't mean that you can't follow through once you get to that point, or if you get to that point. So accountability dies where inconsistency lives. If the rules only apply when it's convenient or only to some people, then trust is going to go out the door. And that's trust between the individual employees, but also between you and the employee. So you need to show up the same way every day for everyone. And that's tough because you're going to have your favorites. We always say we don't have a favorite kid. You got your favorites. But you've got to show up the same way for all of them. All right. The next one is courage. So when we talk about courage, I often ask when I do strategic planning that individuals in the work groups or at the large retreats, that they bring their courageous selves. They're willing to have these courageous conversations. And the reason being is because in our culture, and I think probably since the beginning of mankind, there has been a hesitancy to disagree with people. It's the reason why that term of with all due respect, which I hate, please don't ever use that. Because if you're saying that, you don't mean respect, in my opinion. But we come up with that because we're trying to couch what we're saying and make it not as painful. That implies that giving honest, direct, but kind feedback is not good. So I absolutely am against that whole idea. Courageous conversations are uncomfortable, but can be done with kindness. So I tell my kids, like, you're going to bring your honest truth. It doesn't mean you can't be kind when you bring that. So we're not going to say, I used to say, I love the saying about you've got to be able to tell people that their baby is ugly. Well, I'm not going to say your baby's ugly, but I may give some feedback if they've asked me, obviously, about maybe ways that if the baby has something wrong with it, maybe you could go see a doctor about it. But I'm going to do it in a way that comes from a place of support and kindness. And maybe that wasn't the best example, but you get my drift. Hard conversations do not equal bad vibes. You can call out problems very kindly. Accountability does not equal aggression. So, especially with women, we are considered the big B if we are direct. And I know I have been labeled that myself over the years because the recipient may see it as aggression because that's what they've been institutionalized in their culture to see. But you only can control what you're doing, and you need to hold them accountable. So this is where most people tap out. This is honestly where I have the most trouble. Courage is telling someone they dropped the ball without burning the relationship to the ground. I have been 100% guilty of not being able to clearly tell someone that they've dropped the ball. And then we get to that point where we do burn the entire relationship to the ground because we let it boil out of control. This is probably, no, this is the hardest C, in my opinion. And if you haven't stopped listening now, then you can, I encourage you to try this once today at least, to say something courageous, to push beyond the boundaries, to say, I disagree with what you just said. And let me share why, and then be open to hearing a different response from them. So it's being honest, but with love. And if you can say that for the workplace, you can't empathy, but you're still expecting them to step up. So my son has special needs. And because of those special needs, he has a lot of trouble with different situations. He has massive reading difficulties, comprehension, being able to articulate what he's feeling, communicate as a whole. And I absolutely can empathize with him. And in many ways, I see the struggles that he has in myself. And I talk to him about how I see that, but I also expect him to step up. This world does not have room for him to be cowtailed to. And I don't have room as an employee or an employer to allow people to walk away from their obligations. So that's real leadership. That's keeping your home and your workplace safe so that other individuals will understand, like Jenny's going to say what she's going to do what she says she's going to do. And she's going to tell you if you need to hear the hard truths. All right, so let's recap. We've got clarity, commitment, communication, consistency, and courage. Write it on a Post-it, stick it on your computer. If you are a leader in an organization, if you are someone who's facilitating conversations, clarity, commitment, communication, consistency, and courage, it applies to employee workspaces, it applies to boards, it applies to your interpersonal relationships. So let's run it all back again. The 5 C's of accountability, they're not magic, they're just muscle. You build them over time. But when you do, it is awesome. You've got a team that delivers, a culture that's thriving, and healthy organizational culture is so hard to find. And a leader that's showing up all of the time and showing that commitment. That's pretty powerful. And it really does set the stage. So I'm going to challenge you to ask yourself, what's your strongest C? What's your superpower? There's one of these that you're really, really good at. So what's your superpower? What's your growth edge? And then, what do you need? Obviously, where are the areas you need growth? I'm going to guess it's C5. And what will you commit to this week? What are you going to try? So because we all have something we need to work on, and accountability overall isn't a one and done, it takes practice. I want you to pick one C, and I want you to go get it this week. So that's kind of the presentation for today. If you have questions or comments, or you need help building a culture of accountability, I want to encourage you to reach out to other great leaders in your community and your executive director role or in the board role, or reach out to me if you need help bringing this magic to your team. Stay bold, friends. It's been wonderful having you today.